Hello, and welcome to the Private Practice Owners Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Robin. And today I'm sharing a recording of a Facebook Live that I recently completed with my friend David Bayliff from Uncaged Clinician. If you guys don't know who David is a business coach that I've been a big fan of ever since I was in PT school. I remember being in my apartment studying for anatomy, listening to this guy talk about cash pay services and doing travel therapy. And he was just basically kind of a big influence to me as I was in PT school and really pioneered a lot of the way that I think about kind of going after what you want. So, me and David hit it off pretty good on this recording. And I believe that if you build yourself, believe in yourself, and work on yourself harder than you work on your business, that you will get everything you've ever wanted out of your business and in your life. And we talk a lot about that on this podcast. So tune in and enjoy the recording. Hello, everybody.
Uh,
I'm here with my friend David. David, what's up, man? How you doing?
what is going on, Adam? And I tell you what, it's always just it's a good day when I get to spend some time with you, man. I got up this morning and went to work out with the men's group from church, and the first song played was "Gonna Have a Good Day." And man, I was like, "That's right, I'm going
Mm,
to talk to my man Adam today. It's going to be good."
I know. I woke up excited. I woke up excited for this. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I always start off with just kind of a little bit of a story about
Yeah,
how we met.
yeah.
Right. Um, for those that don't may not know David, I know David. I've been following David since I was in PT school. I remember being studying for anatomy, being on the phone, looking at Facebook and watching David just like hammer out some value, serving other people, helping business owners, and kind of became a little bit of a fan, right? And so I reached out to David, I guess about, I don't know, maybe about a month or two ago. We
Yeah.
just kind of started chatting and we had an awesome conversation. We did a podcast episode together. So I thought it would be super cool to just bring you on, introduce you to my people,
Yeah.
and just
Love
like
it.
learn your story and see if we can have a good conversation. Does that work for
Yes,
you?
sir. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, I know. I remember that first conversation. I knew within probably 45 seconds, I was like, man, I like this dude. I connect with this guy. So
Hmm.
it's a
Hmm.
it's a pleasure being on this journey with you.
Sure, man. Can you start by just kind of like telling me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Um Again, David Bayliff. Well, actually, being from the South, for some reason I've always believe it or not, I've always mispronounced my name, my last name. My wife told me that I pronounce it as if it's spelled Loff, Bayloff, but it's actually
Oh, okay.
Bayliff. That's just my lazy tongue, my lazy lips, but not David Bayliff. Originally from North Carolina, been in Arizona, Phoenix for 30 years now. Always practiced in Arizona and worked in the corporate setting for 19 years. And 2013 started my own mobile practice, cash base. Did that for a good number of years. Still have a few clients in that, but now, as you mentioned, just do some mentoring, some coaching now. But part of my past is just grew up playing tennis, played tennis at Wake Forest. Um, just enjoy being outside. That's why I moved to Arizona because I love sunshine and I love heat and I don't
Hmm.
like humidity and I don't like bugs. So Arizona checked off all those boxes. And that's why I ended up out here or how I ended up out here. But got a beautiful wife, got two kids. One just graduated college, another one's about to she's going to be a junior this year down at the University of Arizona. She's studying aerospace engineering. I don't know where she got those smarts from. It wasn't for me, but maybe they were passed through from one of my grandfathers who was in that world. So, but very proud of both my kids. But now I tell you, like you, Adam, you probably tell people that you don't really work. I know you have some busy days and they might get you a little bit tired, but I know that what you do, you don't look at it as work. And for a long time, I've told people, man, I don't work. I have fun. In fact, when I was working in the clinics, I would tell people like, no, when I go home, that's when my job begins. When my kids were little. But I just look at what I do now. I'm just blessed, thankful that Lord has given me the opportunity to just have conversations with people every day and just have fun. So that's what I enjoy is that. And just trying to, actually, if you will, just mentor people, be a disciple to people, if you will, and hopefully change people's lives, and maybe if I'm lucky, have an impact on the healthcare profession overall as it is. So
Heck yeah, man. You
yeah.
mentioned busy days. I wrote down busy. And I had a conversation with one of our coaches today,
Hmm.
and it was just kind of one of those casual conversations. And we talked about the idea of being busy,
Right.
there's a difference between being busy on paper
Right. Right. Right.
versus being busy in the mind.
Yes.
Right. And
Yep.
it's like, it doesn't, like you said, like a lot of the times I'm super busy,
Hmm.
but I don't feel like it drains me. Right. I
Hmm.
feel like I'm able to work from a place of choice, from a place of things that fill my cup and that inspire me,
Hmm.
and that's a whole different type of
Yeah.
work. You know?
Yep. 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 I was talking to a good friend of mine, who actually had him on several months ago on the podcast, and it was about this topic, being busy. And there's a difference between being busy and being productive.
Mhm.
And so when you can fill your day with productivity, your energy levels are going to maintain high. There's you can do some busy stuff that doesn't take a whole lot of maybe mental power, if you will, physical power. But yeah, when you just feel like you're just doing things, that's totally different than if you're being intentional. And I've learned to be able to look at my day, and instead of judging my day by, hey, did I stay busy all day, is judging my day with, was I intentional?
Mm.
That's something that a coach helped me with. Is at the end of the day is to write up a film review. Hey, did I move the needle today? What went well? What didn't go well? What am I going to do tomorrow? And so when I started looking at, hey, well, can I just be intentional today? Sometimes I might get two things done, and it has totally changed my perspective versus when I worried about, man, did I just stay going after it all day long? Because I knew that intentionality were things that probably in some way help to move the needle. And that's what's more important, is moving that needle, whatever that needle is for you, but
Right.
moving that needle. So I think looking at things with intentionality, man, it's amazing how it leaves a lot of energy in the tank for you, so
Mhm.
that you don't sit down at the dinner table at night and think like, oh, thank goodness I finally get to sit down,
Yeah. Yeah. Man, there's so much I can go into on that. I had an awesome conversation with a client today, and we talked about this idea of like being intentional and designing
Yeah.
your work, right? Like
Right. Right.
design
Right.
being the designer of what you want to do, like
Yeah.
pre-designing what you want to do,
Yes.
and he was the guy, he's got a nice clinic, nice business, and he's like, I go into work and I'm just kind of putting out fires, and I check Facebook and I'm looking at the bank account, and I'm just kind of all over the place. Right.
Hmm.
I don't have a plan.
Right.
You know what I mean? And what is the saying? It's like is not our greatest teacher. It's the experience that we reflect on and debrief.
Exactly. Yep.
That is our greatest teacher, right?
Hmm.
And
Right.
so we talked about this idea that, you know, you as the owner or the designer of your life or your business, right? You inflict you put input into the business to try to fix it, to try to create it, and that creates the outcome, right?
Right.
But who's working on you? Right? Who's working on you so that you can be the person that you need to be to create the change that you want, to
Oh,
create the
oh,
outcome that
oh.
you want, right?
I love that you kind of proposed that question, because if I may go here, I actually had a meeting earlier today with one of the pastors from my church, and his very first sermon that he gave at church, he's been there for about a year. His very first sermon was about, it's not if you're here and you want to go there, it's not about what are the things I need to do, but
Mm,
it's who do I need to be? And I
mm,
reminded him of that, and I said, "Thank you for that sermon, because I've actually used that principle with so many of my people." But you're absolutely right, Adam. Is that, as we go through our day, as we go through life, or as we're transitioning from an identity, or I don't want to say an identity, the arena of, and I know a lot of the people who you work with, they're achieving some great things as maybe as business owners, but at one point they were the implementers, you know?
Hmm.
So as they go through that transition from being an implementer to now being a higher level business owner, it's so easy. And I know you deal with this of people saying, hey, what are the things what are the tactics? What are the tactics? What are the tactics? But what holds people back from actually getting there isn't that they don't know the tactics, but it's that they don't go through that the work of who do I need to be to get
Mm.
up there? Who do I need to be? So I love that you said that, and that's something that I reflect on every day. Is hey, how do I need to be today? Who do I need to be? And I think that, man, when you start answering that question, the things that we want to achieve, we end up not only achieving those things, but we go farther
Yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
really working on that foundation that's going to truly get us there. Whereas, man, if we just think about the tactics of like, what do I need to do? Okay, yeah, we're gonna do that thing, but it's kind of like that going back to that saying of if you aim for the moon or aim for the stars, you'll at least hit the moon.
Right.
Well, if you focus on only trying to hit the moon, okay, you might hit the moon, but there's so much more out there.
Yeah.
But when you think about who do I need to be, maybe you thought you were aiming for the moon, but next thing you know, you're on your way to Mars.
I had a mentor break it down to me in a way that, you know, with this framework, it's be, do, have,
Hmm.
be, do, have.
Yes,
Who do I
yes.
need to become so that I can
Hmm.
do the thing that I need to do so that I can have the thing that I want?
Right.
So it's be, do, have, right? So like if you, if you, and you can reverse engineer that, right? It's like, okay, what do I want? What do I need to do? Who do I
Hmm.
need to become? Like, I need to be
Right.
a little bit smarter, a little bit wiser, a little bit more patient. I need to communicate a little bit better. I have to be more
Hmm.
disciplined. Like all
Hmm.
those, I have to have more self-worth and all those things, right? But what people typically, what guilty as charged, I'm sure you've made this mistake too. We kind of
Never.
think it's the opposite, right? We think it's
Right.
what do, have, be. It's
Yes.
like I'll do
Yes.
the thing so I can have it, and then once I
Hmm.
have it, then I'll be
Hmm.
ready for the thing,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. We have to eliminate the if then in the
Right,
equation.
right.
Hmm.
And that's the type of work that doesn't pay off instantly, right?
Right.
So that's not that instant gratification. It's that long-term investment in yourself that never fades. And that's the investment that you give to your children and to the people
Hmm.
around you, right? So
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah.
this is
You know,
why we hit it off so well because
that's
we
right.
we we're kind of like on the same, like we could go deep on this stuff.
I'll tell you what, like I mean, we're just, you're like the better looking twin brother of mine.
You're the older, wiser.
Hey, I pay a lot of money for this gray hair, man. But what are you? Oh shoot, you just said something there, and it made me think of something. Um, but I think what it was is that you're talking about that instant gratification. I see that so often of people they want their end goal and they want it right now. They want it
Mhm.
10 minutes ago. And so there are ways to hit the moon, if you will, very, very quickly. But what I've noticed is those people who get to the moon very quickly, as they're standing on the moon, rejoice or like, hey, I made it here. They're never satisfied. They're never fulfilled.
Yeah.
There is a level of disappointment. They're finding fault in things. They're finding all they can think about is like, oh, the money that I've spent and the money that I'm not making. And a lot of times, and I know you've probably dealt with this too, with people, is that you then ask them, well, like, look at the money you're making right now. Did you ever make that money at the job?
Mhm.
And they're
Mhm.
like, oh, not
Mhm.
even
Mhm.
close.
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, what are you unhappy about? It's because when you get something so quickly and you didn't
Yeah.
have to and you don't sweat for it, there is that lack of appreciation.
Are you a fan? Have you ever read any of Dan Sullivan's stuff?
I've read a little bit of his. I know I've got a couple of his books somewhere, but I'm horrible at like remembering either authors or names of books. But I know
Yeah.
I have one or two of his books.
So he wrote a book called The Gap in the Gain.
Oh yeah, yep, Gap in the Game.
Yeah. And
Yep,
so
know it well.
yeah, so like you're kind of living the life that you
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Like you wake up every day, you're doing your thing, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
going to work, doing the thing, right?
Right.
And ideally, you're making some progress in life,
Mm-hmm.
either personally, financially, with your relationships, right? And as you start to like really the whole book is really is surrounded by the question, like, what are you comparing yourself to?
Right. Right.
Are you comparing yourself to the gap,
Mm-hmm.
which is from where you are to where you want to be, right? So that's a place of lack. Like, I am not there yet,
I'm not
therefore I
there
can't
yet.
be happy.
Right.
You're
Right.
never going to be happy, right? Because every time you get better, you're like chasing the horizon, right? The horizon, every time you get a little bit closer, it gets a little bit further away, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we have a tendency, and I say we,
Mm-hmm.
our habit that we have is to compare ourselves to the gap, right? Where we want to be. Like, I want to be as cool as that guy. Well, you're
Mm-hmm.
never going to be there. But
Right.
instead, if we can develop the habit of comparing yourself from to the gain, right?
Yes.
Look back 2 years ago and what were you doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And look where you've come now, right? And so when you can debrief your experience and realize how far you've come, you start to develop a new mindset of gratitude and optimism about life,
Exactly.
about what you're doing. So
Yeah.
it's a
Yep.
much better habit, right?
A lot of people forget to turn around and look at the progress that they've made.
That's right.
You
Me
know,
included. Me included.
I've been guilty of that many a time, but it's interesting that you brought up the gap in the gain. Actually, about a year or so ago, I did a talk at an event, and I referenced gap in the gain. And the example that I gave, if I could just share this real quickly with your people, is my wife and I, when we go to visit her family in Texas, we drive, and it's give or take a few minutes. It's 16 hours. We do it nonstop. And from Arizona to Texas, heading that direction, probably like for you being in Mississippi, heading to Texas, you're not going to hit too many hills. All right, it's going to be pretty
Mm-mm.
flat.
Mm-hmm.
So we get up, to New Mexico, get into Texas, and I mean, it's just the same. Like, you can see your dog running away for 2 weeks, and 16 hours nonstop, that gets to be very long, and 40 just goes straight. There ain't too many curves. And so what I've noticed is that when I just focus on straight ahead, that man, it's like, are we ever going to get there? But I've noticed that when I turn my head side to side, meaning taking in the moment,
Mm.
looking in the rearview mirror, all right, looking at what I've covered, enjoying my surroundings of where I am right now, that gap, that horizon actually does start to get a little bit closer.
Mm.
And it makes that 16 hours a lot more palatable because I'm enjoying where I am in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of us, I mean, I know I certainly have been guilty many a times, but we have trouble with enjoying where we are in the moment and appreciating the work that we've done in the moment.
Told you guys he was wise.
you know, Speaking of that, I think in my opinion, or as my best friend from high school back in North Carolina, as he'd say, in my humble but accurate opinion, that the reason why I think people struggle with their gifts is kind of a topic change, but along these lines, the reason why people struggle with their gift is because think about how we are conditioned through life. How are we rewarded? We are rewarded when we've worked hard for something, when we've accomplished something. But our gifts, because they are our gifts and they come to us naturally,
Mm.
we don't put value in that. Well,
Mm.
that was simple. I didn't have to work for that. And so we tend to poo-poo our gifts. And that's something that I think that all of us should probably recognize, of like, no, we actually should embrace that. Here's why we poo-poo it. Let's embrace it. They're your gifts for a reason. But and I've been guilty myself of really, self, deprecation, or whatever it may be, of not really acknowledging my gifts because, well, it's can every doesn't everybody isn't everybody like this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, they're
Mm-hmm.
not. You know, so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was that was chasing a squirrel from Mississippi, North Carolina. We're going to chase squirrels and
yeah.
rabbits and possums, but
Hey, we have no agenda here, man. We can go
no
anywhere we
agenda.
want.
It's your
It,
show. We can do what we want, man.
yeah. The what that reminds me of is what I'm doing right now is we're doing employee reviews with my leadership team.
Mm.
right? So I'm meeting with them
Very cool.
one-on-one. And basically what we're doing is like we are grading each other, right? Like
Nice.
how good are how am I experiencing you from these values, and how are you experiencing me from these, and hey, how can I be better for you? You know? And
Hmm.
what we're realizing through that process is that we significantly underestimate how we impact each other, like in a positive way,
Right, right,
right?
right.
And we don't typically, like like you mentioned, like the gifts that we have and the impact that we do make on the world,
Hmm.
we don't see it because
Right,
it's just us doing our thing,
right.
right? And it's hard to put value on that unless others kind of tell us, right? So
Yes.
I think that's a really cool, because that really kind of goes back to the idea of like, hey, when you have people in your life that you really care about, make sure you tell them you love them, and make sure you tell them like how much you
Hmm.
mean to them and why, because it's
Hmm.
important, right? It's really, really
Hmm.
important.
Yeah, yeah. You know what you just spoke of, Adam. Let's bring that back around to what you just spoke about a minute ago of be, do, have. All right. When we thirst for that accolade, if you will, now we're not really placing our identity of who we need to be in the right place. It's misplaced identity.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think part of recognizing our own identity, and that's where I think a lot of struggles, challenges come from for people, imposter syndrome, comparison syndrome, things like that. It's really an identity, a self-identity awareness. And we are expecting our identity to come from a different source, or our identity to come based on an accomplishment, or
Right.
based on something, based on
Right.
somebody else's impression. But when we can eliminate that and know our true identity, we don't have
Right.
to worry about those type of things.
So I want to pivot just a little,
Yeah.
because you know some of the people that are going to watch this are physical therapists or in the rehab space. Some of them are not. It's probably gonna be my
Right.
mom on here somewhere. But
Shout out to mom.
hey, mom, how you doing? But what I think is really cool about you and what you've done and what I admire is that you were I never even knew that when I was going into school. I didn't know that people did mobile physical therapy, like mobile therapy,
Right,
right?
right, right,
Like
right.
actually like stepped out of the clinic, drove to people's homes
Hmm.
and did therapy in an outpatient basis, right? And
Hmm.
not only that, but you did that and you were charging cash, like you weren't even accepting insurance.
Right, right.
So you kind of dove into the mobile world and the cash pace world before that was even a thing. You're
Hmm.
like a pioneer in that, right? So like I would love to hear kind of like how you found that. Like what were you seeing that made you, number one, like helped you identify that this is what you wanted to do, and like how did you develop the courage to go and do that
Right,
whenever
right,
like nobody else was doing that?
right. How much time we got? Good thing I got me some
Got
fluid
5 minutes. Go.
here. Great question. I love this question. And I say this with just as fact and humility. There's a lot to learn from my story for people, and I say that because there are a lot of things that people, just as you talk to business owners, I talk to business owners. There's a lot, just a lot of ish that people struggle with. For me, um, first, I want people to know this is that, okay, including my mobile job, my mobile practice, and including what I do now. I've had 5 jobs. And the only job that I ever sought was my very first job. Every other job after that found me,
Mm,
including being mobile, which goes back to what we talked about earlier. Okay. Be, do, have. Let's change the words a little bit. What is my identity? From my identity, what relationships do I build from that? And from that, I'm able to serve into my purpose. What we tend to do is the complete opposite, is the
mm,
opposite direction. All right. How many times you hear college kids, oh, I'm trying to figure out my purpose, trying to figure out my purpose. All right. People try to figure out their purpose. And from that purpose, then they develop relationships. And then from that, they say, oh, then I can identify as this.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go in that direction, all right, that's an upward direction. That's a lot of weight on your shoulders. When you recognize your identity, develop relationships from that, let that serve into your purpose. That's downhill. That's a lot. That's going with gravity. That's a lot easier. So where I'm going with that is that for people, when they recognize, like, again, what are your gifts? How do you influence people? And then be open to the possibility of maybe that arena changes. Your gift doesn't change. How you help people doesn't change, but the arena may change. I had a conversation with a guy, and he said, I do this in this area very well, but I don't know where else I could do this. So he's a big Knicks fan. And so I said, hey, okay, where do the New York Knicks, what do they do? They play basketball. Great. Where do they play basketball? Madison Square Garden. Awesome. Okay. When the New York Knicks come out here to Arizona and they're at the Footprint Center, what do? They play basketball. Awesome. Yep. When they go down the street to Brooklyn, what do? They play basketball, you know? So, when they go to Boston to the Garden, what do? They play basketball. That's right. They play basketball. The arena changes, but what they do doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
So can you be open to the arena changing? You're still doing what you do. It may look differently. The surroundings might be different, but you're still doing what you do. So for me, knowing that, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do. From that, a relationship was built with a local concierge doc who I was seeing a lot of her patients. I'm getting to the answer here. And so from that, she said, hey, I've got a guy he's been to the clinics many times before. That's not his thing. He likes for people to come to him. Would you be willing to go to his house and see him? I was like, and of course, I'd never heard of that. This is, at this time, this is 2011. And I said, sure. I mean, I got a couple of mornings a week. I don't work. Sure, I could do that. And she's like, he'll pay you cash. I'm like, oh, okay. That sounds great.
I like cash.
Yeah, I like cash, man. It's just as good as money, I think Yogi Berra or somebody like that said that. But and at the time, Adam, I had been thinking, like, man, I've been in the clinic. At the time, I was 45. I'm like, I do not want to be a 50-year-old staff clinician.
Mm-hmm.
I have no life here. Like, this just stinks, and I'm done with the system. I'm done with insurance. Done with everything. I'm tired of most nights being here till 8:30 because I didn't have a particular reason to, like, rush home. So I got to do something else, but I didn't know what. The only thing I knew was PT, being in a clinic, taking insurance. So I got to, I had been down that road before as a director. I said, I don't want to get in that fire again. So from this relationship, introducing me to someone who wanted me to come to them and pay me cash, that led to my purpose of, hey, I just figured out what it is I need to do. And I became aware of the fact that there are people out there who do want quality care, and they want it to be about them on their timeline, whatever. They want it to be about them, not about the system, not about what somebody else says that they can do. They want it to be about them, and they're willing to pay for that. And again, this was at a time when I knew one other buddy here in town who, about a year and a half prior, he actually had started a cash-based practice. And of course, I was like, how is he doing that? Like, people are actually paying? What? Well, then I found out, like, oh, people will pay. And then when I started thinking about, going all in, again, I had all the naysayers, you know, from people in my deepest inner circle, from colleagues, other clinicians, anybody who I talked to. Oh, you better take insurance. You better take insurance, because they were used to the system. That's what they knew.
Mm-hmm.
But I had been exposed to a world recognizing that, wait a second, when it's about them, like, they're willing to pay when it's about them. They're willing to pay for, just a different level of service. Does it mean that I'm, like, the best therapist in the world? Heck no. But what they're getting, it's a different level of service because it's about them. It wasn't so much that I was mobile, but it was, it was about them. So that's how I got into mobile, really being introduced to it, and then saying, hey, there are people who want someone to come to them, and they're willing to pay for that. So that really is how I got the courage to, again, I just was done with insurance. Like, I wish I could do away with insurance. Hey, wait a second. People are willing to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, how did I go all in? You know what? I talk about number one is I believed in myself.
Mm-hmm.
Just I knew that like, hey, I'm decent with people. I'm pretty good with people. Most people tend to like me. I tend to make a difference in most people's lives. I owned those things. Like, yeah, you know what? I do change people's lives. People do come back. People do tell their friends about me. So I don't need to be worried. I just need to be me. I believed in myself. I was passionate about helping people. I knew that I had the grit. I mean, anybody who goes through, graduate school, PT school, OT, whatever, or you go and you get a certification, whatever it may be, in order to be successful, you have to have grit. So I knew like I've got grit. Do I have as much as somebody else? I mean, we all have different levels, but I knew I had it. And then I knew that I had the patience. In other words, patience meaning persistence. I'm just I like to say I'm just an old stubborn country boy from North Carolina, which means I'm too dumb to quit.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the patience, I had the active patience, but mainly I believed in myself, and that's what gave me the courage to just to finally go all in. Because I knew like worst case scenario was that hey, I'm always going to have a job, but that scenario was never an option. And when I first started, even though for me for a couple years, kind of sweating bullets literally every single day, I never had a day of regret. I was at peace with it because again, just going back to the things that I believed in myself. I believed in how I changed people's lives, and I knew that as long as I just stick with it and stay true to who I am and what I do, like I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. It's just like I relate it to maybe people who run, say, half marathons. All right. Everybody has a goal of making it 13.1 miles. Some people get there in an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Some people get there in 4 hours. But everybody, they get there eventually. And when they get there, guess what? Everybody gets a finisher's medal. Everybody gets the t-shirt. Everybody gets the bagels and the Gatorade and the chocolate milk. So what if some people get there faster than others? Just get there. Enjoy being in the gain and don't worry about the gap.
You know what I love about you?
Besides my accent.
You freaking care, man.
Yeah.
You freaking care about people. I
Well, thank
I
you. Thank you. I received that, brother.
I wrote there's some freaking nuggets in that story. And so hopefully I can wrap this in a bow
Yeah.
for the people who are listening. I want to kind of bullet point what I heard
Yeah.
and then kind of put my language to it. So
You'll probably say it more eloquently than I did.
maybe. So the first thing that I heard was do you despite what the outcome might be,
Mhm.
right? You have to be detached from the perceived outcome,
Yes.
right? If you seek an outcome,
Hmm.
right, then you're not going to be focused on who you are, right?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
and I think the reason why a lot of the reason why people don't want to be themselves is because they're scared of like what others might think,
Hmm. Hmm.
or they're scared that maybe if I do this, I'm not going to get the prize that my mom and dad want me to get, right? Whatever that
Right.
is, right?
Yep.
If
Yep.
I be a YouTuber,
Hmm.
right? My dad won't be happy with me, so I can't be a YouTuber, right? You know what I mean?
Sure.
So be bold enough to and brave enough to be yourself despite what you think or what others perceive the outcome might be,
Yes.
right? And
Absolutely.
then the second thing is, essentially be completely detached from the outcome. And what happens is if you allow yourself to be detached from the outcome, you'll find new possibilities for yourself.
Absolutely.
You'll find new possibilities that you didn't realize existed.
Hmm.
You might meet a physician who'll pay you cash.
Right.
You might find a needle in a haystack, right? You might find this whole other tribe that you didn't know existed
Hmm.
that people that can support you, that can rally behind you, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So number one is be detached from the outcome, be yourself despite the perceived outcome. Number two, You do that, and if you're brave enough, you might find new possibilities for yourself,
Yeah.
things that align with you. Uh, the third thing is you took a risk.
Yeah.
You took a risk on yourself,
Sure.
right? You took a gamble on yourself. You had to bet on yourself. At the end of the day, like the things that the diff like the thing that separates you, this is my belief. The thing that separates you to where you really want to go is just fear, right? Like we
Hmm.
kind of stop ourselves because it's scary and people
Yep.
we might fail, right? But like at the end of the day, you got to take a gamble on yourself and you got to go for it.
Exactly.
Which leads me to my next point is you got to go all in.
Got to go all in.
You got to freaking go all in. Like you went, not only did you go, like you quit your job, you went out of network, you went all freaking in.
All in.
So this idea of like being radically committed is important,
Yeah.
right? Uh,
Absolutely.
and then the
Absolutely.
last thing is grit, right? Grit,
Yep.
like have the grit, like you gotta show up,
Hmm.
you gotta do the work. Man, that's awesome.
They know no. I mean, there ain't no free lunches. We think there are free lunches. There ain't no free lunches. I love your bullet points, your wrap ups, because you put it more much more intelligently than I speak about it. But I love that. I love that.
I have people in my network that tell me that I'm good with words.
Yeah.
And I think that language is important for me,
Hmm.
right? Maybe that's one of my gifts, right? Like I think that putting clear language behind what you're saying is it gives it power, right? Kind of gives
Yeah.
things power. So, man, I think that's freaking awesome. So, I mean, I would argue that what you described right there is really I mean, me and you are so aligned
Hmm.
and that's with that whole framework of like that's how you find, in my opinion, that's how you find success with anything.
Exactly.
Business, family,
Hmm. Hmm.
church.
Hmm.
You want to learn how to cook, you want to learn how to you want to lose 10 pounds. You, like
It's all the same principles.
it's all the same stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like I can't tell you how many, like that's all I talk about
Yeah.
in my coaching program
Yeah.
is like I give you the framework and now it's really like I help you to turn into the person that you need to be so that you can commit to yourself and go
Exactly.
all in.
Yeah.
And next thing
You
you
know,
know, you make progress.
when I first started, I used to be in a networking business group thing, and there was another guy in there. He had just started his practice. He did a granite kitchen countertops, and we would have conversations. And one day he said, he goes, businesses are more alike than they are different. I said, you're absolutely right. And then as I started working with some of my clients, and these guys, they were maybe maybe they were the CEOs or owners of companies that dealt absolutely nothing to do with healthcare. Maybe it was in the oil business or whatever. And they would talk about like meetings that they had or days that they had and things that they needed to do. And they would just talk about it. And I would sit there and say, this is exactly like what I tell people. Yeah. So like what you were saying, doesn't matter what you want to do in life. Is do you understand just the principles of
Mhm.
being successful? And I like to say, we're the only ones who define what our success really is. But success meaning that, hey, you move forward. And so when you can learn to just build relationships with people, to be humble with people, to listen to people, to be a risk taker,
Mhm.
and just say, hey, I'm gonna go all in. you know, listen to people, communicate with people. You're going to have success. Your success might on the outside might look differently than someone else's success, but that's okay.
That's right.
It's the principles. Doesn't matter what arena you're in. All right. Doesn't matter what arena the New York Knicks are in. It's the principle of playing basketball.
Love it. So
Mhm.
I also shared so we're live now in our Facebook group, the Private Practice Owners Club. So we've got
Nice.
some people listening.
Excellent.
Um, and you also help practice owners, right?
Right.
I would love to hear like more about like who you work with. Just kind of tell me about like what you do, the types of people you help, what you help them do, and like yeah, just go for it.
Yeah. No.
I'd love to let you talk about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, thank you for asking. Our bread and butter is that brand new person starting from scratch. and they want to, and they're, just kind of like when when you were a kid and maybe, for some people, they're like, I want to be a magician. All right. So it's that clinician who wants to become a magician, meaning I want to create some magic. I've never done a magic trick in my life, but I want to do magic tricks. All right. In other words, I want to build something from nothing. They are at ground zero. That's really who we work well with. The type of people who we tend to attract are the people who, honestly, I mean, it's a variety, but the people who are looking for, hey, I want this and I want this right now, they tend to go to other places, and that's totally fine. We're very transparent with people. We say, hey, we want, you need help. We want you to get help from whoever you connect with, because when you
Mm,
connect with that person, you're going to go much farther. And
that's right.
that's what we care about. Just like how we want to ultimately change healthcare. I know with what you do, you're ultimately changing healthcare. You're helping people to achieve their personal legacies and to have the best come out in them. Same thing. That's what I love about what you're doing. And if someone, comes to an Adam Robin and they connect with you, awesome, they're going to do great things. If someone comes to me and they're like, man, I don't connect with that. He's not, that person's not going to get anywhere. So I tell
Right.
them, you got to connect. So it's that particular person that, um, there is something about them where maybe they need, whether they know it or not, they need a little bit more of that hand holding. A lot of them, maybe they need a little bit extra work between the ears, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but that's like for me working with them, that's where I thrive, is helping people to just get out of their own way. A lot of people
Think
are in
different.
their own way, you know. I mean, I get in my own way too at times. So sometimes when I'm coaching people, I'm sitting there telling myself, David, are you listening to yourself? But that brand new person who doubts, like, hey, I know other people have done this before, but can this really work?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
again, it goes back to, I know David Copperfield has done magic tricks, but I've never done a magic trick. Can I really do a magic trick? You know, Giving them that belief and the confidence to be able to do that. So that's who we thrive with, who we work best with, is that just that brand new person looking to get started, and where do I go?
And I would assume it's going to be people who are willing to go all in on who they really are and get committed.
That would be best. And I know you've seen this as well, but that person who's not committed, they're not going to get there.
No, they're not.
They are not going to get there. And people coming in, I mean, people will, oftentimes they may tell you what they think that you want to hear, or they say what they want to be telling themselves, but there's still that level of fear from a number of sources, to where they just can't go all in. So they don't get anywhere, but that's out of my control. But I've had plenty of conversations with people who, they're working a full-time job, they're taking on PRN work with home health, and they say, well, I'll give attention to my thing when my thing gets busy.
Hmm. You're not all in.
You're Yeah, I tell them, I say, well, here's what I'm seeing, is you want to grow a garden. If we can use the farmer's analogy, okay, you want to grow a garden, you want your garden to be there, but yet all your seed packets, or all your seeds, are still in the packet, and you haven't even ripped open the packet yet.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
how do you expect your garden to grow? I said, let's do a review here of everything you're saying yes to. Full-time job, which, hey, I get it. Full-time job, PRN job, and you keep saying yes to PRN job. Let's do a rundown of what you're saying no to. Your thing.
What's going on, David?
How is your thing supposed to grow if you haven't even opened up the seed packets to plant the
It's
seed?
scary. It's
Yeah,
scary.
right.
It takes a
And
it's
I get it, yeah. But you've got to be willing to be courageous, to be bold,
Mhm.
and for Adam, for your people, if I could give them one gift, and if anybody that you work with, if they're a little bit nervous, if they feel a little bit scared, I want them to stop and say, hey, you know what? Despite of where I may be right now, I made a decision that 95% of my colleagues will never make.
Hmm.
So they've already exhibited a massive amount of courage. So if you have anybody that's maybe, questioning themselves, I want them to know, hey, you've already displayed a massive amount of courage. So you're more than halfway there. And that's something I try to impart on people as well. So a lot of people need permission to feel like it's okay that maybe they're not a success yet, but they also need permission to recognize where they are and maybe what they are struggling with, but they need permission to acknowledge, hey, this is what we know to be true about you.
Good stuff, man. Well, listen, thank you. Thanks, man.
Thank
Share a lot,
you.
drop some value there. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely, man. They could just find me if they're on Facebook. They can just DM me. I've got a personal page. Our Facebook page is Uncaged Clinician, but they can DM me there in Facebook, and I'm always happy to chat with people, answer questions or whatever. Happy to serve. So
Absolutely, man. I appreciate the time, David. Let's do it again sometime.
yes, sir, Adam. I look forward to it, brother.
Talk soon.